Donald Trump has won the 2024 presidential election and will be returning to the White House come January. Now that the political kayfabe of election season is over, true men and women of the right are faced with a question. What should the right wing do in terms of strategy over the next 4 years? To be clear, Donald Trump is by no means the ideal right-wing leader. I am fully aware that Trump is essentially a classical liberal, 90s Democrat who supports Israel. With that said, however, the next 4 years under President Trump represent an opportunity-rich environment of which the right must take full advantage. Failing to capitalize on these opportunities would be a strategic blunder of the highest proportions. Regarding metapolitics, the next 4 years will see a clash of myths and narratives. As of now, the Francis Fukuyama end-of-history narrative has shown to be demonstrably false. On a broader level, the post-war consensus itself is losing steam day by day. For example, nobody in 2020 would have predicted that Tucker Carlson would platform a revisionist historian to explain how Winston Churchill was a villain rather than a hero. Nobody in 2020 would have predicted that within a few years it would have been possible to openly name the Jew on Twitter and not get banned. This trend is likely to continue, especially after the last boomers meet the Reaper in the coming decades. As the power of liberal myths and narratives decline, in their place they will leave a vacuum. Indeed, one of the right's primary objectives over the next 4 years is to fill the vacuum with our own myths and narratives. People will begin to ask, what is the story of America? And the true right must be the ones to answer this question. We cannot allow the neoliberal mythology of anti-racism and civil rights to survive, nor can we allow agents of containment such as Christopher Rufo and Konstantin Kisin to return America to a colorblind society in which identity politics is only allowed for the Jews. Tying this back to strategy, over the next 4 years, there are things we must build and things we must destroy. Per the tenets of elite theory, the right must build a counter-elite that is able to capture political castles. We must have a cohesive political formula, a compelling mythology of America, social capital, and openly pro-white organizations and institutions. On the other side of the coin, we must destroy competing myths and narratives such as the post-war consensus and Christopher Rufo's colorblind vision for America. Furthermore, as Israel's war with Hamas comes to an end, the right must work to destroy the reputations of Bibi Netanyahu and Ben Shapiro. This task will become easier as American boomers approach the day of the pillow, but in the meantime, a full-court press on the JQ is in order. Importantly, if long-term goals such as remigration and mass deportations are to occur, the right must first be capable of accomplishing these aforementioned short-term objectives. So what concrete action can be taken? Fortunately, tangible projects have already been started across multiple countries. With respect to building pro-white institutions and organizations, one project that must be mentioned is Orania in South Africa. The Orania settlement is a town dedicated to the survival of the white Afrikaner identity, and its population has boomed in the past few years. The Afrikaners have faced anti-whiteism to a level that no other country has, yet despite this, they are successfully building their own communities, organizations, and institutions independent of the regime which rules them. For this reason, Orania deserves special praise, but to my delight, it is not alone in its endeavor to be a haven from anti-whiteism. In the United States, Arval's Return to the Land project in the Ozarks performs a similar function. Arval's project circumvents many of the legal pitfalls that have ruined similar projects in the past, and demonstrates that tangible, in real-life havens from anti-whiteism can exist and can do so legally. As such, within the next 4 years, projects like Orania and Return to the Land should serve as blueprints for future pro-white settlements. Another example of concrete organization can be found in America's Old Glory Club. Within the span of a few years, this organization has grown to a nationwide fraternity with chapters across the United States. The Old Glory Club draws upon American aesthetics from a time before the United States was subverted, and reminds young men that their country was not always synonymous with liberalism, homosexuality, and anti-whiteism. Moreover, the OGC represents a way for young right-wing men to find their like-minded countrymen and network with them. Regarding activism, one example of an organization to emulate is White Australia, formerly known as the National Socialist Network, or NSN. This is the activist organization responsible for drawing attention to a Chinese immigrant who pours scalding hot water on a white baby in Australia. They have popularized the slogan, "Fuck off, we're full," and have done explicitly pro-white activism in a fruitful, strategic manner. Their organization encourages physical fitness, personal virtue, and intellectual prowess, and is best represented by members such as Joel Davis. All four of these aforementioned groups demonstrate tangible, real-life efforts to build pro-white organizations and generate social capital. All four of these organizations accomplish different objectives, with Orania being an example of building a haven from anti-whiteism, while White Australia focuses on activism. Furthermore, all four of these groups exist independent of Donald Trump and the machinations of big tent party politics. During the next 4 years, the right must help organizations like these grow, while also founding more of them across the West. Organization is power, and if the right is to have a capable counter-elite that will one day rule, groups such as these must expand and network with each other. The next 4 years present a golden opportunity to do this, as we will not have Democrat apparatchiks in government bombarding us with lawfare to the degree we would if Kamala Harris had become president. Before I transition to highlighting narratives which the right must destroy, I should like to say one last thing on the topic of building. Projects that consist of multiple people will be far more useful in the grand picture, because organization is power. But with that said, this does not mean that projects started by individuals cannot be undertaken. Quite the contrary. If you have a skill that can be useful for the broader right, the upcoming years represent a golden opportunity. If you are adept at web design, for example, offer your services to a pro-white organization. If you are a personal trainer, make it your mission to get as many young white men strong and fit as you can. If you have something to say, write a book or start your own Substack or channel. Use the next couple of years to do something for the pro-white cause that capitalizes on your skills. Our movement will be better for it in the long run. Now moving on to narratives that must be destroyed, it is worth reiterating how far the right has come in the past few years. In 2020, the regime locked us in our homes, pressured people into getting the jab, and forced us to wear masks. Americans were constantly bombarded with anti-white propaganda centered around George Floyd. In fact, the only acceptable reason to leave our homes and congregate, according to the government, was if it was to riot over George Floyd's death. Nobody within big tent conservatism used the term anti-white. Nobody was talking about the Troon issue, its Jewish origins, or was criticizing the state of Israel on Twitter. All of this has changed in an extremely short period of time. The power of our narratives and our ideas is truly something to behold, if only our ideas are allowed to reach an audience in the first place. This is why YouTube censors dissident thought so harshly, and why Twitter under Parag Agrawal banned our posts. The power of leftist myths and narratives is not organic. The left's power lies in the fact that they control the institutions and the media. In terms of strategy going forward, we must use the next 4 years to attack the mythology of the left and the containment right. We must push the boundaries of discourse and normalize ideas that up until now have been anathema. Furthermore, if any naysayers try to blackpill, anyone who dares naysay must be resolutely countersignaled. Daryl Cooper openly calling Churchill a villain on Tucker Carlson's podcast was unthinkable 2 years ago. Yet it happened, and severely wounded a sacred cow of the post-war consensus in a way that has never been done before. If censorship becomes more lax over the next 4 years, we must take advantage. Particularly, our two greatest targets over the next 4 years must be to attack the prevailing narratives surrounding World War II and the Civil Rights Act. In conclusion, the next 4 years must be a time in which the right gets serious. Donald Trump and Elon Musk are not our guys, but having them in charge opens doors for us that we must capitalize on, and that would not have been open for us if Kamala was president. Furthermore, ample blueprints for concrete action exist, and we have no shortage of work to do in the coming years. The post-war consensus, this Nuremberg regime that plagues us, cannot last indefinitely. If we make good use of our time in the next few years, and if we are strategic in our decision making, then the collapse of the Nuremberg regime will come sooner rather than later. Only then can we march to final victory.